When Insomniac's Spider-Man was revealed at E3 back in 2016, no one really knew what to expect. The IP had been mishandled by Activision dating all the way back to the 2000s, and their final chance to prove themselves ended up with a 44 on Metacritic. Marvel weren't happy with Activision's performance, leading to their contract ending just before Amazing Spider-Man 2's release, creating room for a new developer to take their place. A few names were thrown around, with the most notable one being Microsoft, who denied the opportunity to work on Spider-Man to focus on their own IPs instead, whatever that means. So they turned to Sony, and of course, the rest is history. But the question still remains: how and why did Insomniac's Spider-Man not only become the best-selling game on the system, but also the most platinum game of all time? I want to take you back to 2004, specifically July 9th, which was the release of Spider-Man 2. This game was received really well for its gameplay, open world exploration, and combat, but the main takeaway to this day is how Treyarch perfected the swing. The swing is one of, if not the most important parts of getting a Spider-Man game right. It's the main method of travel and one that players will spend hours upon hours using to get around. And yet, after Ultimate Spider-Man's release a year later, not a single game moving forward could perfect it. Now, that's not to say that the swinging in these following games are bad by any means. Spider-Man 3 had a solid web swinging mechanic, but it was never truly the feeling you got when swinging around New York in Spider-Man 2. That was until Web of Shadows released in 2008. The swinging in this game is unlike anything we've seen before. It was more fast-paced, more in-depth, and had a higher skill level to overcome in order to truly utilize the swinging to its full potential. The game was considered by many to be just above Spider-Man 2 in terms of swinging, and it stood that way for a solid 10 years. We had Shattered Dimensions, Edge of Time, both Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, but still, Web of Shadows had no competition when it came to the perfect swing. However, all of that changed on September 7th, 2018, with the release of Marvel's Spider-Man on the PS4. Insomniac knew that they had to get the swinging right in this game, and the way they pulled it off was with a little thing called momentum. See, Web of Shadows is fast and enjoyable, but once you hit a building, you fall to the ground to regain that lost momentum by starting the swinging process all over again. But with Insomniac's Spider-Man, hitting the building turns into a wall run, keeping this momentum and creating a seamless experience. There are so many more instances of this happening throughout this game, and each one contributes to the overall satisfaction of swinging around New York. You can zip around corners, fit through fire escapes, jump out of a roll when you land, zip forward in the air, and the list goes on and on. What Insomniac did to perfect the swing will always be one of the best additions in this game, and if anything, might be one of the main reasons so many of us were willing to continue towards that platinum trophy, even after the main story was finished. But what if it wasn't just the swinging that helped? What if it was the actual trophy list itself? According to PSN profiles, Spider-Man's Platinum comes in at around 25 hours, with 51 trophies to earn, not including the DLC. For completing the story, you earn 9 trophies, already guaranteeing you 17% completion towards the Platinum. But that's really not the reason as to why this trophy list is so good. Where it really shines is with the post-game cleanup. You see, many people, including myself, finished the story to this amazing game and felt a bit lost. We wanted more, and to fill that gap, we started collecting backpacks, taking photos of landmarks, and completing Fisk hideouts. These collectibles alone won't turn a non-trophy hunter into an addicted trophy gremlin, but what will is the trophy list being made in a way to reward this post-game cleanup. For example, after collecting 5 backpacks, you will earn a trophy, complete all objectives in a base, and another trophy will pop. Grab the first Black Cat collectible, and again, receive another trophy. These are all earned early on, and easily hooked many of us into clearing the whole map for that 100%. But again, what happens if that isn't enough? What if, after the entire story and the first few hours of collectible grinding, you still aren't committed towards earning that platinum trophy? These are some of the most important trophies on the list. Why? Because they keep the player engaged and satisfied without really doing anything. Fast travel 5 times, perfect dodge 10 times, swing across the rooftops, climb the Avengers Tower, greet 10 citizens by literally pressing square 5 times, and I can keep going on and on. But the point is, they are made to keep the player engaged. While you're grinding for that overall 100%, why not change your suit 5 times? Why not stealthily take down 75 enemies? Because you're doing it already. Before you know it, that 17% towards the platinum has jumped to 70%, and all of a sudden, you care about the platinum. You care about a few random pixels on the screen because you enjoyed this game. you enjoyed the story, and there's a very high chance you enjoyed the combat. Without a doubt, the combat in Spider-Man games have always been good. Web of Shadows is a great example of this, letting you body surf and use a crazy moveset with a black suit, which is something I see being adopted into Insomniac's Spider-Man 2. Back to the point though, the combat in Insomniac Spider-Man is easily the most fluid and smooth combat we have ever seen for a Spider-Man game. You could pick this game up for the first time, and after a few minutes of playing around, already know how the combat system works pretty quickly. The foundation is mainly the same as the rest because the Arkham-style combat just works super well for any superhero game. It's smooth, it's fun, and just like the swinging, brings a level of immersion to this game that all of the other ones couldn't really reach. Some of the most fun I've had in this game was taking on the enemies at the prison, racking up my combo and feeling invincible while doing so, because by that point, I had mastered the combat. The moves can also be upgraded using the skill tree as well, allowing the player to enhance the gameplay even more with upgrades such as Air Yank, Ground Strike, Wrecking Ball, and multiple other ones that truly make what is already such an amazing system 10 times better. But I would say, given Insomniac's involvement with PlayStation, this is just the level of quality you expect with a PlayStation exclusive. Over the years, PlayStation has built this reputation of making the best exclusives on the market. Whether you play PC, Xbox, or PlayStation, unanimously, PlayStation is the choice for first-party games, and there's countless examples as to why. The Last of Us, The Last of Us 2, God of War, Ghost of Tsushima, Horizon, and to be fair, any first-party game since the PS3 and primarily the PS4 is guaranteed to leave you feeling some type of way after finishing the story. The stories tied to these games are seriously incredible, and everyone was aware of this back when Spider-Man was announced in 2016. So the question arose, why would Spider-Man be any different than the rest? It's clear that before Insomniac Spider-Man, the series wasn't doing the best. I mean, it sold well for sure, but the fan reception wasn't great outside Web of the Shadows and a few others. The fans were hungry for something other than a movie tie-in. They wanted an actual Spider-Man experience. They wanted to swing from the rooftops, webbing bad guys, and for the story to not be plagued with bad voice acting and plot holes. I mean, Marvel trusted Sony, the fans trusted Sony, and even the people that have never played a Spider-Man game in their life trusted Sony, because they knew how good the other exclusives have been. It's also worth noting that to this day, PlayStation is very supportive with longer development times. As a good example, The Last of Us 2 and God of War were both in development for more than 5 years, and as we learned a bit later on, Insomniac Spider-Man was developed in just over 4 years. If we compare that to the previous Spider-Man titles, Activision's choices were completely different. Most of these games were being pumped out every 2 years, with Edge of Time actually being pushed out the year after Shattered Dimensions, which is kinda crazy. There wasn't really any room for improvement or uniqueness within these games because there simply wasn't enough time to change stuff around. So when the time came for a new Spider-Man game, and it was being made by an amazing team and an amazing publisher, you have to admit that there was a level of hype not really seen for a Spider-Man game before. In my opinion, this hype from the game comes down to 3 things. Of course, the fact it's developed by a first-party studio, it was coming off the failure that was Amazing Spider-Man 2, and in 2018, the Spider-Man IP was probably at its peak, and let me explain why. Around 2 months before the teaser of Insomniac Spider-Man at E3, Captain America's Civil War was released. This movie grossed over $1 billion, and the main takeaway from this film for many people was Tom Holland's Spider-Man being introduced into the MCU. After the reception of Amazing Spider-Man 2, this was probably the best thing they could have done to save Spider-Man from falling off the face of the earth. And it worked. The hype for Spider-Man was incredible, and when the game was teased at E3, that hype transferred onto the game's release. Fast forward to 2017, and Homecoming was released, which is the first movie in the Tom Holland trilogy, and also was received extremely well coming off the back of Andrew Garfield's films. This would, again, generate a lot of hype, which stayed until the release of Insomniac Spider-Man on the 7th of September 2018. We did also see Into the Spider-Verse at the end of 2018 too, which I can only assume contributed to the overall sales that the game had. Insomniac Spider-Man broke the record for the most copies sold in 3 days at 3.3 million, with 1 million being pre-orders, which again broke another record. To put it into perspective, it beat the record of 3.1 million previously set by God of War, and it earned an estimated $81 million more than Spider-Man Homecoming did in its opening weekend, which truly goes to show how much hype was behind this game. It also received an 87 on Metacritic, making it the only entry in the game series to reach that score since the original Spider-Man game on the PS1, 18 years before it. In the years since its release, it's become the most sold PS4 game, sitting at around 20 million copies, and it's also the most sold superhero game in the US ever, making Insomniac Spider-Man the most successful Spider-Man game to date, and easily one of the most successful superhero games to date as well. So, in my opinion, Spider-Man became the most achieved Platinum Trophy because Insomniac did everything that Activision did, but extremely better. They made a genuinely incredible game that is accessible to everyone. They wanted to make sure they got everything right, and they succeeded. Microsoft could have easily taken this IP on board, and who knows for sure what would have happened with the next Spider-Man game. It could have been a better game, it could have been a worse game, but I'm pretty sure landing with Sony was the best outcome for the Spider-Man series. And most importantly, we all ended up grabbing that Platinum Trophy.